Hello YouTube, how is everyone doing? It's Professional here. Welcome back to my playthrough of Ace Attorney, the Apollo Justice Trilogy. Hope that you guys are enjoying this, and I will also have a video on the eWin gaming chair. So this is a chair that I gotten from my friends at eWin. I'll have a review up in the next couple of days on it, but this is the chair that I'll be using from now on for playthroughs and you know, any other kind of videos that I make. Really comfy chair. So just if people are wondering about that in the background, but also if you want to get one of these chairs for 20% off, I will have a link down below in the description. Use my code TP. But anyways, on to the video here. We are continuing from where we last left off, and we're going to be starting the trial now. The fourth case, Succession, and you guys told me that this is the craziest trial in the game. I noticed that a lot of people have been starting to watch my Ace Attorney series that have been searching for it. So a lot of fans in the Ace Attorney community that still love this game and love watching new people play the game, because I've never, you know, played Apollo Justice. But anyways, let's continue from where we left off. It's going to be a pretty interesting interesting trial. Let's do it here. October 8, 9:48 a.m. District Court, Defendant Lobby number 6. Good morning. So, you're Vera, right? I'm Trucy Wright. That's right with a W, but, not right. Right? We're on your side. You can tell us anything, please. Good morning. She speaks. Not bad, not bad. But I think you'd better do a little smile, you know? You're so pretty, you need to sell yourself, you know? Trucy, let's take it easy for starters. Thank you for taking my case. Okay, well, that's a start, I guess. There she goes with the nail polish again. That's great, really. It's so cultured. Want to try? Ooh, really? Girls. The victim, Drew Misham, was a forger, and a stolen painting was found in his studio. A life of crime, really. Maybe one that led to his death. October 8, 10 a.m. District Court, courtroom number 3. Well, we will now, begin the, trial of Vera Misham. Is the judge okay? Yeah, what's wrong with him? His voice is all raspy, and he's looking around all nervous-like. The repercussions of today's trial will most likely be felt for a long time, alright, because it's a test trial for the jury system, and may indeed alter our legal system forever. Today is a test of the jury system, and the first step towards a new order in our courts. Yeah, but using like a an actual murder case is like a test for like a new system. No. Daddy's secret mission. The jurors will function like a jury. It is hoped their inclusion will help the courts better reflect the people's will. Why aren't there any jurists in the courtroom? 3 closed-circuit cameras watch this courtroom at all times. The jurists have access to everything that transpires. Jurists, judge well and judge cool. Now see here, Prosecutor Gavin. I was going to say that. My apologies, Her Judge. Jurists, today are... Judge today's trial coolly, if you would be so kind. The jurists are unbound by the letter of the law. They don't affect the trial with evidence, but by their feelings. We're about to find out just what effect they're going to have. Very well, Prosecutor Gavin, the details of the case, if you would. The victim is the painter Drew Misham. He was killed in his own studio. His coffee was poisoned by whom, you ask? By none other than the defendant, Vera Misham. There wasn't any poison in the coffee. Achtung, someone has been doing their homework. Achtung again means attention in German. Indeed, poison was not present in the coffee, but on the mug itself. The mug. Residue was found in the room, I see. The autopsy report describes the manner of our victim's death. The court accepts this as evidence. Death by atraquinine poisoning. Estimated time of death 9 to 9:30 p.m. According to this report, the victim's death was caused by atraquinine poisoning, a chemical compound that does not occur naturally. Lethal dosage in a mere 0.002 milligrams. Rumesham, male, time of death October 6 between 9 and 9:30 p.m. Cause of death atraquinine poisoning. A touch of atraquinine in the body is a touch of the Reaper's scythe. Very well, Prosecutor Gavin, you may present your witness. I have for you today a simple man for a simple case. A man who witnessed the murder in its entirety. It's the reporter, that journalist, no doubt. The witness will state his name and occupation. Oh, this guy. Alright. Well, for starters, my name's Sparky Brushel. My job is a lone observer of the world. In other words, a freelance journalist, right? If you don't mind, I'd like to state something here for the record. Yes, Mr. Brushel? I dislike conclusions, specifically the aspect of jumping to conclusions. Preconceptions make a park sandbox of endless desert waste, end quote. But you are a journalist. You said so yourself yesterday. Well, that's true, yes. But you must understand, I stand before you today a man with a dream. I'm offering you my testimony in exchange for exclusive rights to the story. That's not how it works. You testify because you're doing it what's right. You're witness to a trial. Scoop turns Mr. Brushel into that Mr. Brushel, end quote. Let's hear your testimony then, shall we? Simple case, eh, Gavin? For me, the jury is still out. Let's see what he has to say. The journalist's story. I visited the studio around 9 that night to do the interview. The first outsider to enter the atelier, journalistic history made, end quote. His daughter brought us coffee right after we started. And you know what happened next. Star falls, end quote. No one else entered the room besides her the whole time. That does sound like a simple case. Unless you were the one who poisoned him. Good work, Judge. Good work. Finally, the judge isn't an idiot. What are you saying, Judge? Need I remind you, the cameras are rolling today. I felt the need to be a bit dramatic. You didn't do it, did you? Me do a thing like that? Come on, that's like newsmaker making the news, end quote. Or even contemporary witch hunt, end quote. I know, wild accusations draw courtroom, end quote. Rock indeed. Prosecutor Gavin sure looks like he's having fun. I'm so happy for him. Very well, Mr. Justice, your cross-examination, please. I visited the studio around 9 at night to do the interview. 9 at night? Isn't that a little late for an interview? If the great painter Drew Misham says come at 9, believe you me, I go at 9. The first and, as it turned out, last interview was such a prolific painter. Right. Can you tell us what it was like when you arrived? The first outsider entered the atelier, journalistic history made, end quote. You were the first reporter ever in Drew's studio. Posterity will look back on that night as a turning point in journalistic history. A basically insignificant step for all mankind, but a giant step for that Brushel guy, end quote. If no one on the outside ever had access to the studio, then it would serve to reason that the deed was done by an insider, by which he means Vera did it. So how did this epoch-making interview go? His daughter brought us coffee right after we started. Would you mind being a little more specific? Oh, let me tell you, I enjoy a cuppa. In fact, it all began when I was in 3rd grade. No, wait, 4th grade. That's not what I meant. This is irrelevant information. I believe I know what her forehead is driving at. This coffee the victim was served. Did anyone other than the defendant touch it? Right. That's what I was going to say, really. Well, now, if you've got a question to ask, You best straight up ask it. That's what I tell all the new recruits several times, if necessary. Write for a grade schooler. That's my motto. Which isn't to say I can only write grade school level stuff, mind you. Who touched the coffee? Yep. Dunno. I was in the back, looking at the studio's equipment when she served it. And what happened next? And you know what happened next. Star falls, end quote. What's this about a star falling? Star falls, huh? It's like an old telegram. Send money over. Zowie! You don't know? That's like a journalist code word. An important personage passes away, a star falls, get it? There's no gravity in space, is there? I wouldn't think stars could fall, really. Does this matter? Ooh boy, this is good stuff, good stuff. How about star breaks? Nah, lacks punch. I know, star dies, nah, lacks imagination. Of course, you could go with Drew dies straight to the point, I like it. I think we need to hear about something a little more substantial. Let's hear about the moment of death. About when Mr. Mission passed away. Oh boy, what a scene that was. He put his coffee mug down with a crash, right? Yes, and then? Then the cold finger of death touches his spine. Life's flame sputters and fails. So cold was that touch, he could do naught but tremble uncontrollably. Actually, Life's flame is a little tired. Life's river froze over. Yes, that's a go. I think he's starting his article already. Could you describe that a little bit more simply? Well, as you can imagine, I was pretty surprised. He hit the floor, as they say. Artist Caesar, his final performance. End quote. Atrocanine paralyzes the central nervous system. The body aches, arches back like a bow. The limbs tremble. That's quite enough of that. Some of us want to be able to sleep tonight. Oh yeah, well I want details, lots of juicy details. For that you can listen to our last year's hit single. Atrocanine, My Love, by the Gaffners, available at all major music outlets. The point here is that the victim died of atrocanine poisoning. Well, Mr. Justice, how did you find that testimony? Paralyzes the central nervous system. Very important. Well, as an account of the movement of the victim's death, I say it's very important. Please add it to the testimony. Very well. The court requests the witness add this account to his testimony. Those spasms, that was definitely death by poison. Let me look at the autopsy. Atrocanine poisoning. You say it was definitely death by poison. How can you be so sure? Hey, look, I'm a journalist. I've seen a lot of things. And I've had more than my share of experiences with the so-called poisonings. Man eats fishy fish, goes bye-bye, end quote. Food poisoning doesn't count. Should I get him to talk about something else? Brussels coffee. So you drank the coffee that Vera served you, too? Of course. When someone serves you coffee, you drink it. That's what my old boss always used to say. Never did get what he meant by it, though. But you're still alive, which is to say, you didn't die. Of course not. No point falling, before you're a star, end quote. That's not exactly what I was getting at. What were you getting at, then? You know the poison was on the rim, not in the coffee. Oh, yes. There were 2 cups in the tray she brought. And one of the cups had Drew's signature painted on the side. No chance the guest would take that one by mistake, I guess. Well, Mr. Justice, was that testimony important? We're talking about the coffee the witness drank. I say that is important. Very well, please add that to your testimony, Mr. Brushel. I drank the coffee too, but I'm not dead yet. You're sure you drank the coffee? Oh yes, yes quite. I gulped it down. Felt that sweat scorch in my throat. But you say the victim took one sip and fell over. And you still kept drinking. Of course, drink your coffee when it's hot, never when it's not. That's what my old boss used to always say, never really knew what he meant by it. Should I get him to talk about something else? You say Mr. Misham had the coffee too, but did you actually see him drink the coffee? Of course. He who sees it wins, but he who says it wins bigger. End quote. I live in a man sees dog eat dog, and writes about it world yet. I guess I can't, say I saw him drink it really. He had one so-called sip. If that man put slips to muck, drinks, end quote. That poison is quite virulent, I hear. My stomach did a so-called somersault, since I gulped down the coffee without so much as a second glance at it. Wait, maybe something's there, some kind of so-called trick. Anyone who wants to venture a guess for the record? Does this guy have a pause button? Well, Mr. Justice, did you find that testimony valuable? The victim drank his coffee, then immediately fell over. Oh, yes. You can go, press with that one. Your Honor, this is a vital piece of information. Please add it to the testimony. Very well. The witness will add this to his testimony. Vital, right. He had one sip of that. Next moment, he was on the floor. It's a slow-acting poison. So, how can he be dead right away? It's gonna take several minutes for it to kick in. Objection! You know what I have a problem with, a particular, property of the poison used, atropine. Oh, Prosecutor Gavin was quite clear about the poison. A lethal dosage of 0.002 milligram paralyzes the central nervous system. If you drank that, even you, Mr. Justice, would be reduced to a quivering pile. Why are you using me as an example? Unfortunately, we weren't told everything. There was a vital omission in Prosecutor Gavin's information. An omission? Atropine is as virulent as he says, but death doesn't come upon ingestion, not immediately. That's because atropine is slow-acting. Slow-acting. What? According to one forensic scientist, it's one of the most virulent poisons, but it's absorbed into the body astonishingly slowly. It takes at least 15 minutes from the time of ingestion for adverse effects to show. If we suppose that the moment Mr. Misham sipped the coffee was when he sealed his fate, then he would still have had time to enjoy his last cup of joe. Order! What's the meaning of this? If what the defense says is correct, why that contradicts the entire testimony we just heard? Well, Mr. Brushel, anything to say on the record? Slow act. It was virulent, alright. Even then, it had already begun digging its claws into the journalist. He's working on his scoop. Objection! It's Brushel, yeah? Or Brussel. Let's take a trip back down memory lane. Huh? Did the victim really die the instant he took a sip? Think it over. This is vital. You know what I think? I think that was a not-so-subliminal suggestion. End quote. I admit, it does cause a problem if he died when you say he died. I would be forced to say Auf Wiedersehen to my simple case. That means goodbye. And you would be forced to say farewell to your article. Come again? You can't write a story based on conjecture, can you? As the case drags on, other reporters will pick up the scent. And you'll be forced to kiss your exclusive scoop goodbye. Scoop. Look, just wait a second. Just 1 second. We're waiting. Out with it. I think I just recalled a so-called important detail. A revival collection, end quote. A story's survival, end quote. Attorney, utterly confused, end quote. Actually, I did notice something when I visited the studio. I heard a poison that takes its sweet time, see? But not what I've, been saying for the last few minutes, apparently. Mr. Brushel, are you saying you noticed something that explains what happened? You bet I am. The antidote for a poisonous contradiction, end quote, you might say. Or I still have no idea what you're talking about, end quote, I might say. I figured it out, but only after an in-depth interview. See? Thanks to my journalism skills, I know who poisoned that coffee. Oh, this should be good. Order, order, order. As far as I can tell, the witness is standing by his testimony that Mr. Misham died the instant after he drank. Of course I'm standing by my testimony. What if he didn't get poisoned from the cup? What if he got poisoned by this, the tiny frame, and he was already poisoned the moment he drank the cup he died? Of course I'm standing by my testimony, and my dream of exclusive rights to this story. Ah, I suppose it was too much to hope for. So yeah, if a witness actually said that, I'm standing by my statement because it will be a good story. They'd be immediately discredited. If they were like a reporter that just wants to get a good story, that's not a credible witness to bring up. What was? Of course he wouldn't choose a simple case, not him. Him? Phoenix Wright, who else? Achtung, Herr Brushel, report for us if you would. What is it that you noticed? This court is a critical trial of the juror system. I'm afraid no room for doubt is permissible. You will testify to the court about what you noticed. What Brushel noticed. When I arrived at the studio, Mr. Misham was at his desk. He seemed to be writing a letter, but he quickly sealed the envelope. I thought I knew nothing of it at the time, of course. Now that I think about it, what if he was writing a suicide note? A suicide note. Yes, he had this look on his face. Man's face inscrutable as a quadratic equation, end quote. Suicide, poor Mr. Misham. But that means Vera's innocent. Would someone commit suicide in the middle of an interview? Oh. Very well. You may begin your cross-examination. Something's not right here. When I arrived at the studio, Mr. Misham was at his desk. Hold it! Was there anyone at the studio other than Mr. Misham? Well, his daughter Vera, of course. Was anyone besides Mr. Misham and Vera present? Not a single one. Not a cat, not a rat, not even a mouse. Ugh. The only person who didn't belong to that studio there was you, wasn't it, Mr. Brushel? I know what you're doing. I know your game. Attorney uses classic Ramsden phenomenon ploy, end quote. If you intend to suggest that this reporter is a suspect, I'm sure you also intend to present evidence supporting that assertion, correct? In the meantime, let's move along, shall we? He seemed to be writing a letter, but he quickly sealed the envelope. Hold it! So he put the letter away when he saw you. Early reporter gets worm, end quote. That's my secret. I'm not sure I follow. It's the night of the interview. I arrive 15 minutes ahead of schedule. The handle turns, the door opens, and I barge in. Are you sure that's okay to do? I mean, isn't that unlawful entry, really? Mr. Misham sure seemed to think so. You should have seen him. He crammed his letter into that yellow envelope as fast as he could. I know a secret when I spot one, and that was one. It does seem significant. Well, Mr. Justice? I wonder. It does have the ring of something important. Added to the testimony. The defense finds this information vital, Your Honor. Very well, please add it to the testimony then. Hey, why not? My account comes free of charge. It was a yellow envelope. I heard it was left at the scene of the crime. Found in the victim's desk. No. Objection! As it just so happens, there was a single letter in a desk drawer at the scene. In a red envelope. What? Prosecutor Gavin. Yes. Was a yellow envelope found at the scene of the crime? Unfortunately, no. But her forehead. It's easy to mistake the color of an envelope. I guess. But not this envelope. You see, it was postmarked already. 7 years ago. Well, Mr. Brushel, I can explain that. Drew, right? He wanted to get the letter in an envelope pronto. Get it out of sight of my badly eyes, right? So he grabbed the nearest envelope and crammed away. And what about the whole red and yellow envelope contradiction, chump? Well, Mr. Justice, have you anything to say to the witness's claim? That night, the victim put a letter he had been writing in a red envelope. I've deposited $100,000 in the designated account. Please send a receipt once you confirm the transfer. Sign the papers and send in the unclosed envelope with the unclosed stamp within 3 days. I need not remind you to speak of this to no one. It's possible. It's entirely possible. But Apollo, we checked the contents of that envelope yesterday, didn't we? Oh, you're right. The answer was clear if I only give it a little thought. As it just so happens, the defense team investigated the contents of this envelope with the assistance of a forensic scientist. What? Note that this letter is addressed to Drew Misham. Oh. Why would he address the letter to himself? Let alone send a suicide note to himself. I've been scooped. Order, order, order. Mr. Brushel, can you explain this to the court? Oh my. How could I have forgotten? I suppose this happens to the best of us. Reporter gets old, forgets lots. End quote. I'm still waiting for an explanation, Mr. Brushel. Well, that's the thing, see? After he put his letter in the envelope, this is basically the stupid music that's playing. When this music plays, you're usually encountering a stupid character in the game. Mr. Misham sat there searching his desk drawer for something. His desk drawer? Yes, a stamp, a so-called postage stamp. End quote. A stamp? Whatever for? Well, to mail his letter. What else? And then, why yes, I think I saw him put it in his letterbox. Yes, it was a yellow envelope. And he put it in that box. Well, apparently, this yellow letter has nothing to do with the case. Oh, how I wish it did. Just think if that were a suicide note. What a story. Star writes suicide note in front of reporter. False. But I think that mailbox is empty. End quote. As I was saying, that has nothing to do with this case. That said, yes, Your Honor. It makes you wonder about the cause of that red envelope. I deposited $100,000 designated account. Signed a paper saying an unclosed envelope. $100,000 is quite a good deal of money. So this was from 7 years ago. Yeah. So am I finished here? Am I finished here? I was thinking of, going home to start writing. No, you're not going anywhere. We need more testimony. I hate to state what should be pretty obvious to anyone, but when you catch the set of a story, you make that, or rather unique face. Come on. Attorney has active imagination, little else. End quote. Even I noticed something, and my eyes aren't what they used to be. I'm starting to understand what all this perceiving stuff is about. Judge has active imagination. End quote. Please continue for testimony. Tell us about the set of a story. Hey, I'm the one asking the questions here, usually. The set of a story. Actually, it took a bit of work to get a thumbs up on the interview. Reporter leverages story, gets his interview, end quote. The story concerns a certain case from 7 years ago. That red envelope probably had something to do with it. Say what you will, but Drew's talent was without compare. So you threatened to go to the press with this story. That's how you got your interview. Blackmail. Well, yes, no. It wasn't exactly black, if I'm not Something wrong, Mr. Brushel. Look. This is my story, my tidbit. Journalist info is livelihood, end quote. I see. While you have me chatting away in here, what's going on out there? What if some Wally Wordsworth or Sally Scooper gets wind of my story? They could be going to the press while I'm going to the waste. The court feels your pain, Mr. Brushel. Mr. Justice, let's pick up the pace. We can't rush a trial for some idiot reporter. A certain case 7 years ago. Wait, 7 years ago. Actually, took a bit of work to get a thumbs up on the interview.
Hold it!
The victim, Drew Misham, had an aversion to reporters. Boy, I guess, not even my considerable charms did much for him. Until I finally got my thumbs up, that is. Maybe you can elaborate on that a bit for us. Actually, it took a bit of work to get a thumbs up on the interview. I feel like he blackmailed him, he knows something.
Hold it!
The victim, Drew Misham, had an aversion to reporters? Boy, I guess, not even my considerable charms did much for him, then how did you get the interview? Until I finally got my thumbs up, that is. Maybe you can elaborate on that a bit for us. Reporter leverages story, gets his interview, end quote. Exactly what sort of story was this? Oh, a little one, like I said. Nothing more, nothing less, nothing in between. End quote. I might have suggested I had a lead on this particular story, but I didn't threaten or cajole or nothing, honest. So a suggestion was enough to get an interview. Mr. Misham must have really wanted to keep it under wraps. The story concerned a certain case from 7 years ago.
Hold it!
A certain case, 7 years ago? Tell us what case. Let me state one thing, Mr. Attorney, and you can quote me on this. I can't talk about that case. Well, why not? It's about journalistic pride and staunchness and credibility and connections. Somebody has been murdered. Somebody's dead. Screw your journalistic pride. You gotta tell the court the truth. You wouldn't be able to say something like this in court. It's about journalistic pride. If they ask you a question, you're supposed to answer it. Journalist reveals sources only over his dead body. End quote. So what'll it be? Gonna strangle me? Dead men don't tell tales, Mr. Attorney. He sounds pretty determined at the talk. Our chances of breaking his will aren't looking good. The red envelope probably had something to do with it.
Hold it!
On the one hand, we have your story, and on the other, this letter. What makes you think the two are related? Oh, I was just saying it's possible. Call it reporter's intuition, end quote. Hey, I say a lot of things. You gonna pick all of them apart? Be my guest. All of them. No, just incredibly suspicious ones. I see. Anything else to add about Mr. Misham? Say what you will, but Drew's talent was without compare.
Hold it!
Just how amazing was Mr. Misham's talent? Huh? Ooh-wee, boy. I mean, hey, he's a star, man, a star. The flow of his brush is like a great, undulating river across the canvas. Artist paints lights up studio-like sun, end quote. This sky's full of wacky gestures, but that one just now was wackier than usual. He looks kind of nervous to me, Apollo. Definitely. I'm sensing something different than before here. Maybe it's time to bring out you-know-what. That testimony left a bad taste in my mouth. It all makes sense. Nothing jumps out as ridiculous. I wonder what the story he's talking about is. It must have been good to get an interview with a famous recluse like that. Something powerful enough to drag Drew Misham out of hiding. I wonder. Maybe it had something to do with Mr. Misham's art. He knew something about the art. I think he was blackmailing him. That's what I think. Gotta look for something suspicious in his, that red envelope probably had something to do with it. There's gotta be, something that he's doing. I wonder. Gonna take a little bit of work to, how he got that story, I wonder. There's gotta be something off about him in one of these. I think it's gonna be the first one. This guy's a lot harder to break than the other people. There's something changed besides his mouth. I don't... This isn't gonna be easy finding his weak spot. What? No. Is that seriously it? It is! Oh! He's sweating in his armpits! It took me so long, I was looking all over his face and everything, and it turns out it was...
Gotcha!
Sweat much, Mr. Brushel? Yeah, well... A man can't help his glands, you know. It's more than that. When Mr. Misham's talent was mentioned, you suddenly began to sweat buckets. Ah, you're hiding something about his talent. What? That's ridiculous. Evidence time. Let's show where Mr. Misham's true talent lay. It just so happens I have evidence showing the talent mentioned in the letter. This painting was found in Mr. Misham's studio. There are two problems with this painting. The first is it wasn't painted by Mr. Misham. The second is that there was another painting in the studio, which looked exactly like this one, except it was only half done. Then we have a letter discussing a payment of $100,000, which suggests a certain business operation, the business of making forgeries. Oh... That is all, Your Honor. Everyone, please, everyone. Can we keep this private, please? This is my story, my scoop. Forgery. That's a serious crime. Drew Misham is known as an artist these days, but there were rumors he dabbled in another kind of art until a few years back. Another art meaning forgery. Drew Misham was talented, alright. Talented at making precise, detailed fakes. A fact that certain criminal elements were quick to discover. Criminal elements. What? You can't seriously be talking about... Exactly. I'm talking about forging evidence. The rumor started circulating 7 years ago. This is 7 years ago. So are we to understand that this letter, this payment of 100,000 was for... Exactly. Forged evidence. And that's tidy profit, and end quote. So I wonder if that has anything to do with Phoenix's case, because Phoenix was accused of using forged evidence. Order, order, order! Why, it's like our victim was living a double life. Aha, this is my chance. So the victim had ties to the criminal world, right? He could have had plenty of enemies we know nothing about. This is my first time hearing of this criminal world. We certainly found no criminal connections when we conducted our investigation. But how do you explain all this money? You have to admit there's a possibility of some illegal activity here. But there is no proof tying this letter to our case. Our case was and remains simple from the beginning. Only the defendant could have poisoned that mug that night. And you, of course. Hey, the only thing I poison is my pen when I'm writing reviews. Ugh, toxic reporter. Mr. Brushel, your testimony at this point has been quite unreliable. It doesn't speak well of your reporting acumen. Yeah, get him off the stand, Judge. He's an unreliable witness. What are you talking about? My journalism is rock solid. Journalism is so solid you could stand an elephant on it. End quote. Ugh. In any case, let's hear a summarized recap of your testimony. If we can ascertain the situation in that studio from the recap, the trial is over. Apollo, what's he talking about? The cross-examination showed Mr. Brushel didn't have didn't have reason or means to poison him. As long as there's no other suspects, then the killer had to be Vera. That's what... This next testimony is our last chance. Mr. Brushel, your testimony, please. The interview, a recap. The only other person in the studio that night was the defendant. It was Vera who poured the coffee. She's admitted as much herself. The only thing that touched Drew's lips during the interview was the mug. And nothing left the studio after he died. Nothing. Clearly, the only one who could have poisoned him was his daughter. A nice testimony, clear, succinct, and without room for doubt. Ah, shucks. You really think so? I believe this clarifies the situation that night. Very well, Mr. Justice. You may begin your final cross-examination. Right. I still have one trump card left to play. And I won't let this trial end until I use it. The only other person in the studio that night was the defendant.
Hold it!
But that doesn't prove Vera poisoned it.
Objection!
How many times have we heard that one, her forehead? The poison reached his victim via that coffee mug. And from where did that coffee, come, Not to be a dead horse again and again, perhaps you could fill us in. The thing is, though, is that all this is, really, is this is circumstantial evidence. For people that don't know what circumstantial evidence is evidence that basically suggests that somebody had done the crime, but it's not direct evidence. Direct evidence would be more like fingerprints, like, you know, a video of the person doing it, like something that specifically ties them directly to the crime. But here, it's not really proof that she did it, because she was just there when the murder happened. Yes, did she touch the coffee mug? Yes. But a good lawyer could argue so many other people touched the coffee mug. And what's important is the poison was not inside the coffee, it was on the mug. That's very important, because a good lawyer could argue that that coffee mug was poisoned way before she poured coffee in it. So it could have been poisoned days, months, weeks beforehand. So anyone could have touched that coffee mug, and there might have been somebody else that was in the apartment. The reporter himself might have been there another time and might have touched the mug. I'm on it. You need a horse beat. I'm your man. It was Vera who poured the coffee. She submitted as much herself.
Hold it!
And you witnessed her pouring the coffee. Of course I didn't witness it. When she came in with that tray, the coffee was already poured and steaming. Let us not forget the defendant has admitted to pouring the coffee herself. I heard her statement. I poured, I served, and I killed. And I killed? What? That last part was just a little joke. No, you can't joke about something like that. I don't think I'm going to get anywhere with this coffee mug. I need to find another weak spot in this case. The only thing that touched Drew's lips during the interview was that mug. You're sure about that? Well, to be really precise, I was busy gobbling mint candies the whole time. One of those candies might have been poisoned. Yet, at the time of the autopsy, no fresh fragrance of mint filled the room. And no mint residue was found. It was a long shot anyway. Don't tell me you're still trying to prove this. You think the victim ate, drank, or otherwise ingested something other than coffee? I think I know what they ingested. Well, Mr. Justice, if you have some proof, possibility is there, I can feel it. Just maybe not prove it, not yet. And possibility isn't going to cut it, not now. Mr. Misham ingested that poison via a route other than the coffee. I can prove it. Proof is possible. I gotta risk it. Oh, excellent. Let's see your proof then. Please show us your evidence. What evidence shows that the victim wasn't poisoned via his coffee mug? This. Bears traces of deadly poison. It might have been a picture of somebody he cared about and he might have kissed the picture. There's no picture in here.
Take that!
Must I explain this over and over again? We don't need possibilities here, her forehead. We need proof. I know that. You should also know that every proof has its moment. Perhaps you're a bit early. I can tell you what we know at this point. The victim put nothing to his mouth but that coffee mug. Sigh, another hole in this case and needs plugging before I can prove anything. But first things first, I better uncover a weak spot before I try to strike again. On with the cross-examination. And nothing left that studio after he died. Nothing. That's it! It's a letter! It's a letter! He sealed it with his lips. The poison was on the letter. I see it now. Remember, he said that there was a yellow envelope. But there was no yellow envelope happen. He left with that. It's that.
Hold it!
Not one thing. You're sure? Yep, sure as sure can be. Well, with one exception. One exception? What? Journalist Spark Brushel does interview, leave studio. End quote. Ha 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 ha, come on. It's a joke, get it? Not funny, I know, but still. Did something leave the studio that night? Why does that sound familiar? Where have I heard something like that before? Now that we've proven our witness is a comedian of sorts, I'd like to turn to our defense attorney before returning to the testimony. Do you have any idea what, if anything, might have left the studio that night? Just one thing. I think one thing might very well have left the studio that night, actually. A certain something that has vanished from the crime scene. By which you mean something other than our witness. Of course. Don't tell me. Veramisham? Believe me, any comic relief I may provide is entirely unintentional. Then let's see what you've got for us, Mr. Justice. Well, this thing wasn't at the scene of the crime, so I can't show it to you. But I do have evidence that shows how it could have been taken from the scene. The letterbox.
Take that!
This is the only link between that studio and the outside world. A letterbox. What did Mr. Brushel just tell us? When he entered the studio on the night of the murder, the victim had just finished writing a letter. Yup. Yeah, I said that, and yeah, it was true. Furthermore, you went on to tell us that he put the letter in a yellow envelope and put it in the letterbox. Ah. But that very same letterbox was empty. In other words, that night, the yellow envelope disappeared. Ah, yes, intriguing. So an envelope has disappeared from the scene of the crime. Of course, this changes nothing. Huh? He has a point, Mr. Justice. No, it changes everything. What we're trying to figure out is here how the poison got into Mr. Misham. Judge, you idiot! He licked the letter to close it shut. That's how the poison got into his system. Is it really important that this envelope the witness says he saw disappeared? Well, if it did disappear, then something did leave the studio that night. That seems very important to me. Very well then, the witness will add this to his testimony. You got it. I still think this fails to change anything, her forehead. Nobody can see it. I wouldn't be so sure. A letter disappeared from the crime scene that night. This is exactly the opening I've been looking for. The letter was put in the post from the studio, but I hardly think that matters. Nothing could be more serious than an envelope disappearing from that studio. And you are hiding that fact from us. Yes, well, actually... I don't argue the possibility the letter disappeared from that studio. But her forehead, isn't there a much more serious question before us? Right, how Mr. Misham was poisoned, I know. Or Mr. Brushel's testimony has changed, which means the facts of the case have too. And what he's told us means something entirely different now. I'm starting to think. Let's keep thinking, Apollo. Clearly, the only one who could have poisoned him was his daughter.
Hold it!
You say clearly, as though it was obvious. But this claim the defendant poisoned the victim is merely conjecture. Yes, it is. Yes, well, you see? In my business, it's all about making the most ridiculous things sound right. Ugh. A bad habit, I know. Yes, Weller, actually. I guess this is more of a case of ridiculous journalist sounds wrong, end quote. This court is forced to agree with you, please refrain from wild conjecture. Understood loud and clear. Only I could believe that. What do you think, Apollo? Everything he's saying seems so not flawed. Well, that's kind of what you want from a testimony, really. I need to keep my eye on what matters. How and why was Drew Misham killed? Vera poured the coffee, that's not going to change. But that coffee didn't kill him. I need to find what did and prove it. I wonder if this is the letter that was taken. No, he said yellow envelope, so it's not this.
Objection!
It's not it.
Objection!
No, it's not that either. No, it's not this, too. Damn, what could it be? I'm missing something here. I'm in trouble here. I have to end this now. Damn.
Hold it! Objection!
Yeah, we've seen this before. Okay, I can prove this. You do understand what we need, yeah? Prove her, forehead. Not possibilities. Of course. And Prosecutor Gavin, I hope you understand. I'm ready to give you that proof. What did you say? I have proof of the disappearing envelope. I saw him writing a letter, I did. Which was picked up by the mailman, I assume. Of course. Which means... that envelope had a stamp on it. A stamp? Ah. As we all know, stamps come with a dried glue on the back. In order to use the glue, you have to wet it by licking the stamp. Yup, we got it now. That was it. Then, no one was worth talking to actually lick stamps in this day and age. But he's an old-fashioned guy. He lives there by himself. That's how he's gonna do everything, too. So yeah, I was on the right track. That extra testimony I needed, but then I needed to come back to this. Even if you wanted to talk to him, you couldn't. He's dead after all. Okay, so he licked the stamp. But wait. How does that explain the atriconine on the rim of the coffee mug? If he licked the back of a poison stamp, the poison would get on his tongue, yes? What would then happen if the coffee mug went to his mouth, Those traces in the mug weren't the killer's doing. It was the other way around. What? The coffee mug didn't poison Mr. Misham. Mr. Misham poisoned the coffee mug himself. Order, order, order! But that does it? Recall, if you would. Atriconine is a slow-acting poison, yes. The poison entered his body when he put the stamp on the envelope. But his time wasn't up until the very moment he touched his lips to that cup of joe. You have something to add, Mr. Brushel? Uh-oh, his nose is picking up another scent. As I believe I mentioned earlier. Well, that's the thing, see? After he put his letter in that envelope, Mr. Misham sat there searching his desk drawer for something. Yes, a stamp, a so-called postage stamp. End quote. But you know, I don't seem to remember him ever finding one. Maybe he just ran out. Incidentally, we searched the desk drawer at the scene of the crime. There was no stamps. Not a single one. It does pose a problem. How will you prove that the stamp was coated with poison? Actually, I'm glad no other stamps were found. It makes proving the stamp he used, was poisonous possible. Ahahahahaha. Good show, good show. You can't even prove there was a stamp at the scene in the first place. It's this. This. Look, the tiny frame. He had a stamp in here. This is enough for a stamp. Well, let's hear what the defense has to say anyway. Where is your evidence that proves the existence of this poison stamp?
Take that!
Well, that certainly is a cute little frame, and by little, I mean really little. It was on the victim's desk, Your Honor. Quite empty, as you can see for yourself. I noticed that too during my inspection, so what? Apparently you weren't as observant as you should have been. You see, when you saw this frame, it was missing something quite important. Missing something? Yes, a pale bluish stain on the inside of the frame. Atriconine residue. What? Why wasn't I told about this? The frame is only 2 inches square. The face of the frame is even smaller. Maybe an inch wide at most. You aren't saying... Oh, but I am. Tell me, what fits in such a small frame? A commemorative stamp, perhaps? Order, order, order! The poison stamp was in this frame? Impossible. Prosecutor Gavin, why would he put something like that on his desk? Don't tell me he had it there so he could commit suicide if the mood struck. You know, can I say something? I had a thought, see? What, Mr. Brushel? And please stop jittering around like that. The victim was a forger, right? There's a lot of money in that line of work. Forger forges friends, makes enemies too, end quote. So the poison stamp might have been a murder weapon aimed at him. Oh, rich. That's rich. Leave the ridiculous flights of fancy to the Gaviner's song lyrics, please. Finally, something we agree on. The stamp was a murder weapon? Nonsense. Murder is a simple business. Who would go to such lengths? No one. Oh, I disagree. I think you would be surprised the lengths people will go to commit murders. Come again? Recall, if you would, the victim's reclusive lifestyle. Drew Misham hid from the world. He avoided meetings. His only contact with the outside world was the mail. The mail. Now, if you wanted to kill someone you couldn't meet, but you knew red letters, a stamp would be the perfect weapon. Ridiculous. Where's your proof? I want proof. Show us the evidence that this poison stamp was sent to him as a murder weapon. I might not have evidence, per se, but things are finally starting to come together. What is it, Apollo? Your fists are trembling. I think I know what happened. I don't believe it, but I can see it. I think I know how Mr. Misham was killed. Well, fill us in, Mr. Justice. A certain piece of evidence points to the truth, Your Honor. I can show you how someone with the intent to kill sent Mr. Misham the stamp of death. I can show you how someone with the intent to kill sent Mr. Misham the stamp of death. The unclosed stamp. I need not remind you to speak of this to no one. It's this. So the killer sent him the letter and the stamps too. Isn't this the envelope? The one from 7 years ago? Think about the text of the letter again. I've deposited the $100,000 in designated account. Please send a receipt once you've confirmed the transfer. There are 2 pages in the envelope. This is page 1. And this is page 2. Sign the papers and send in the unclosed envelope with the unclosed stamp within 3 days. I need not remind you to speak of this to no one. I want to draw your attention to one phrase in particular. Send in the unclosed envelope with the unclosed stamp within 3 days. The unclosed stamp, Your Honor. Ah! In other words, if I have this straight, the stamp poison on the stamp. Lick, lick, gasp. End quote. Now, what if he had done exactly as the letter asked? He would sign a document, put it in the envelope, and put the stamp on it right. Then he would put it in his letterbox. 15 minutes would have elapsed between fixing the stamp and mailing the letter. That's the perfect murder weapon. A murder weapon that you can make disappear through the victim. Damn, that's genius. But the clock started ticking, and when the time came, he drew his last breath. And the murder weapon would be taken away from the scene. Quite conveniently, thanks to the postal system. We need to find that letter. Such a splendid imagination you have, her forehead. Let me confirm one thing with you, if I might. So this poison stamp was inside this envelope from 7 years ago? Yeah? Is that what you'd have us believe, really? Well, it is a little bit of a stretch, but there's a possibility. Yes, a very small possibility. How small, I wonder? A poison stamp in this envelope. A stamp that then became the murder weapon. How do you intend to prove this seeming coincidence? Well, heck, it was 7 years ago, and we don't even know who sent that letter. And your answer is silence, I see very well. I move to... It's not nice to pick on the Fraulein, Clavier. What? Ah, Emma. Okay, I got scared there for a second. I thought I saw, Kristoff. Kristoff is Clavier's brother, who's a killer. Emma. Well, like my Kristoff Gavin impression, did I sound like him? Oh, God. Don't quit your day job. Don't you have a crime scene to be looking after, Fraulein Detective? Someone had to come dig you all out of the mess you're making of this case. Mess. You know, none of this would have happened if you just trusted in science a little more. You can find out if that stamp was, in envelope easy. Care to explain yourself? Oh, her science, her machine, right. It can trace it can check the envelope for traces of poison. Glare at me all you want, but science is on my side. It's all in the residue, right? That's right, the poison detection spray. Produce the red envelope at once. You can open it on the authority of the court. Well, looks like I already found it. Well, would you look at that? No mistaking it. That's atrocinine residue. I don't believe it. A murder weapon from the past. Yeah, now drop the charges against Vera, because this trial is nonsense. We've already proven she didn't do it. There's no, you can't keep pressing her for this. Now, 7 years later, it bears its fangs at last, so there's no reason this court should go on at this point. We have pretty much proven that Vera could not have done it. It was whoever sent this letter here, and there's no proof that Vera was the one who sent the letter from 7 years ago. So, you know, she lives with him. It makes no sense. So, you know, this trial should be over now.
Objection!
Absolutely outrageous. Tell me why. Why did this murder take place 7 years ago? Well, there's one possibility. Maybe Mr. Misham figured it out. Figured out what out? He realized the person who sent that letter wanted him dead. So he sent his reply with a different stamp. And put his decisive evidence in a frame. But then why would he lick it again? Ah, you're still here? Can I make a statement here on the record? I, Spark Razortooth Brushel, claim this scoop as mine. Drew Misham killed in cold blood. By sender of 7-year-old letter, end quote. No, maybe something more succinct. Star falls after 7-year delay, end quote. Order, order, order. I see no room for further argument here. Though I admit this is all coming as quite a shock. To think that the murder weapon reached his mouth after 7 years. Stamp his ticket straight to afterlife, end quote. I think the witness is a bad influence on our judge. I see no need for further debate on this matter. The sender of that letter 7 years ago could hardly have been our defendant. Apollo, I think we just won. Very well. This court finds the defendant.
Objection!
What do you have to say? What? She didn't do it. Is this the bright future of our legal system? Prosecutor, Gavin? A ticket to the afterlife from 7 years ago. Tickets for Gaviner's shows are invalid after 2 weeks. But it doesn't make sense any other way. It boggles my mind that so many people haven't noticed this. There's a fatal contradiction in her forehead's claim. I know. He's gonna say, if he knew that the stamp was poisoned, why'd he lick it? Unless he was trying to commit suicide. That's what he's gonna say. A contradiction. A poison stamp was placed in this envelope 7 years ago, whereupon it was framed until now. If that's the case, why would Drew Misham have done what he did? Emma explained that. He must have realized it was poisoned. Exactly, I know what he's gonna say. Therein lies the rub. 7 years ago, the forger Drew Misham sensed the trap and put the stamp in a frame. I do not debate this, but this begs the question. Why 7 years later did he use that stamp on the night of the murder? Surely you don't mean to suggest that Mr. Misham simply forgot. He put the murder weapon in a frame on his desk for 7 years, and forgot? You expect us to believe he sprang the trap on himself? While I admit this is all quite shocking myself, it does seem highly unlikely that he would fall afoul of a trap that had been sitting on his desk for 7 years. Apollo, I don't think we're winning anymore. I'm glad to see we're all back in the real world now. Welcome back to reality. We've been waiting for you.
Objection!
No, this isn't over. Okay, then how do you explain the poison stamp that was in this envelope? Poison stamp? Where exactly is this poison stamp again? Have you brought it to court for us? I see no proof that such a thing ever existed. What about the atrocanine residue, huh? Oh, I agree, that does seem to be atrocanine residue. But her forehead, it's certainly no stamp. Yeah, but even if your precious poison stamp did exist, Drew Misham never would have used it. That is all. Urk. I believe we've come to a conclusion again. Apollo, were we wrong the whole time? I can't believe it. The poison traces matches up. It can't be coincidence. I'd like to bring in some closure to this issue sometime this year. Mr. Justice. Yes, Your Honor. Let's review the facts and see where we stand. 7 years ago, Drew Misham received a red envelope. There were traces of the poison atrocanine on the document inside that envelope. A similar trace was also found at the crime scene. On this tiny picture frame, the defense has indicated the possibility of a yellow envelope. An envelope that left the scene of the crime with the poison stamp on it. Yes, but even if this envelope contained a poison stamp, and Drew Misham, knowing this, put it in a frame, he never would have used that stamp. I'm afraid you're right. Which means there is a fatal flaw in the defense's case. I haven't been on the wrong track this whole time, I'm sure of it. The traces of atrocanine, the envelope, the frame, and Drew Misham's mysterious death. They're all connected somehow. Well, Mr. Justice, do you have a conclusion for us? The defense stands by its case, Your Honor. We've seen that the logical outcome of the evidence makes no sense, which means that one of our clues must be a fake. A fake clue? Fascinating. And if we find this fake, your wild fantasies will prove quite reasonable, yeah? The fake clue that's thrown us off at this poison's trail is none other than... What is a fake clue? The frame. This frame is the fake clue? Without a doubt, Your Honor.
Objection!
Wasn't it you who presented this evidence to the court? Oh. Hold on a second, Apollo. The poison on the envelope, that frame, and the coffee mug, they're all connected somehow. Oh, right. Sigh. I can hear it already. It looks like the fake was you, her forehead. We can flog ourselves later, Apollo. Now's the time for thinking. The fake clue. This red envelope is a fake? Without a doubt, Your Honor.
Objection!
Wasn't it you who presented this evidence to the court? Oh. But how would Drew be a fake? That's what I don't understand. The victim was a fake clue? I'm afraid I don't understand. I'll explain. We have an envelope, a frame, and a mug linked by poison. That all makes sense. What doesn't make sense is the victim himself.
Objection!
Congratulations, you've completely lost me. So the fake evidence is none other than the master of fake himself, the forger? It makes a good story, I'll give you that. The fake clue, fakes, forgeries. Ah. I know that face, I just had an idea face. I don't know if I'm right, but I'm going with it anyway. What if our forger is the fake? That's not his real name? Come again? 7 years ago, our forger sniffed a trap and stepped aside. 7 years passed. Now the forger stumbles into that very same trap and dies. Why? That's what I want to know. What, suicide? Because the forger who was killed was a fake. It wasn't the real Drew Misham? Here we are again. The victim was a fake? One forger smelled the trap. One forger fell into the trap. That's 2 forgers, and one of them was a fake. So that wasn't Drew Misham? Then who the hell was that guy? Order, order, order! So you are telling us that Drew Misham, the victim, was a fake? Well, if he was the fake, who was the real forger? You better not be claiming there was some kind of switcheroo. Oh no. What if the forger was Vera? And her father didn't know about the poison stamp? I'm afraid you're gonna have to back up your story. Mr. Justice, show us just who the real Drew Misham was. If Drew Misham wasn't the real forger, there's only one other person it could have been. Understood, Your Honor. Forger Drew Misham was hiding himself a forgery. The real forger was Vera.
Take that!
There can only be one explanation, really. The real identity of the forger known as Drew Misham is none other than his only daughter, Vera Misham. Order, order, order. Mr. Justice, this is going out on a limb, even for you. I kinda agree. I mean, Vera, a forger? Let's consider it before you write it off entirely. If you look at the paintings in the studio, one fact becomes quite clear. Forgery had been taking place in that studio for quite some time. The forger wasn't caught in the trap 7 years ago. This can only mean that the one who was caught in the trap wasn't the forger. Well, actually, that does make a certain kind of sense. One more thing. Only 2 sets of fingerprints were found in the forger's studio. Drew Misham's and Vera Misham's. If we know that Drew Misham wasn't the forger, that leaves only one possibility, by process of elimination. The forger was Vera Misham. Well? Fascinating. Vera Misham. You've been paying attention to the trial so far. Let's just ask her and be done with it, shall we? Who are you? Who is the forger, Drew Misham? Was that an expression of emotion I saw on her face? She's staring holes into Prosecutor Gavin's, face. I'm used to being stared at by Fraulines, believe me. Though they usually talk to me too. Tell us, were you the one who forged those works of art? Yes. So the forger, Drew Misham, was you? Yes, it was me. What? What? The court was in uproar, and it wasn't coming down. We had to break for a 10-minute recess. Oh, this is gonna go crazy now. Ooh, yeah, this is gonna be... man, what the hell? That completely flipped upside down. I can't believe I didn't see it earlier, that it wasn't Drew, but it was Vera. How could I have missed that? But I was right that it was the envelope that was licked. It was just the stamp. But I was on the right track there. So, Thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you think down below. If you guys enjoyed this, do drop a like. I'll next part for you guys as soon as I can. You guys were definitely right. This is the best case in the game that I've played so far. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful day, guys.